With its first season set to release in a few months' time, it goes without saying that Moon Knight has Marvel fans scratching their heads in excitement. And since everyday viewers have next to no idea what to expect from the hard-hitting anti-hero, we thought we'd step in and help. So, what do you need to know about Mark Spector? And what type of show should we be expecting? For all this and more, stay tuned. First of all, it sounds like Disney's making some changes to the source material. Rather than introducing us to the millionaire that is Stephen Grant in Moon Knight, appears to be taking the form of a British museum worker of the same name. But for those of you who are familiar with the franchise, this isn't too surprising. You see, Moon Knight is an anti-hero who suffers from a dissociative identity disorder, just one of the many effects of being charmed and possessed by the Egyptian moon deity Khonshu. And by the look of the trailer, this isn't the only identity of Moon Knight that we'll be introduced to during the runtime of the show. The trailer also reveals a strange voice referring to Stephen as Mark, and if the comic book lore is to be believed, this is none other than Mark Spector, a mercenary that actually discovered Khonshu and was revived by the moon deity as the champion of justice. There's still no word on whether Oscar Isaac will also be portraying the role of Jake Lockley, though, which is another identity Moon Knight often takes on in the comic books. The big difference here is that Mark Spector, the arrogant mercenary, is usually the primary personality of Moon Knight, but the trailer seems to suggest that the timid Stephen Grant is who we'll be dealing with. That being said, this wouldn't be the first time that Marvel Studios has led us down the wrong path with its misleading trailers. The man could be going through a psychotic episode after all. Another change comes in the form of Arthur Harrow, who fans are quite confused about. You see, Dr. Arthur Harrow is one of Moon Knight's least known villains. In fact, he only appeared once in Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu #2 back in 1985. As such, even the craziest of Marvel fans don't know much about the character that Ethan Hawke has been brought on to portray. This means that most of what we'll be seeing is straight out of the mind of Jeremy Slater. Funny enough, the trailer makes it appear as if only the name of Arthur Harrow is what remains from this once-off appearance, as the Dr. Harrow in the source material was actually a scientist obsessed with pain theory, not a cult leader as the trailer portrays him. And this is what has Marvel fans scratching their heads. They've absolutely no idea what to expect from Hawke's character, and the theories that are currently making the rounds are fantastic. Some seem to believe that Hawke is actually the Sun King in disguise, while others have suggested that he is none other than Dracula, the Prince of Darkness. This wouldn't be the first time that vampires were mentioned in the MCU, after all. And now that Blade has finally revealed himself in the post-credit scene of The Eternals, we just know that Kevin Feige is getting ready to introduce the group of monsters to the cinematic universe. Either way, the changes to Moonlight are great, as they'll allow even the hardest of fans to be surprised going forward. Another interesting theory is attempting to link the show to Avengers Endgame, which would once again not be that surprising considering how often DisneyPlus shows have referred to the shared MCU history when telling their stories. Loki, for example, was all about the god of mischief escaping the clutches of the Avengers when he first attacked New York back in 2012. At the same time, Hawkeye showed that Chitauri attack from the perspective of Kate Bishop, who saw the Purple Avenger fighting in the distance when she was just a child. And don't even get us started on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which clearly dealt with the after effects of the Infinity Snaps in the modern world. So would the showrunner go on and link Moon Knight to the events of Endgame? Well, we're not too sure, especially since the tried and tested origin theory of the character is so incredible. But we must admit that this theory has a few interesting points that could be true. You see, according to the comic books, the moon deity Khonshu was once banished from the earth along with the other Egyptian gods. And while these entities were trapped in what was later referred to as the other void, they could still send their consciousness to earth in an attempt to possess people. But according to this fan theory, deities like Khonshu might have an easier time after the first snap, which could have easily sent the souls of those victims straight to the other void. It was then through Hawke's snap that these victims returned. What does this say about the presence of the Egyptian deities, though? Well, we know that Hawke's intention with the snap was to bring back the victims that had disappeared all those years ago. But when they returned from wherever they were sent, they could have arrived somewhat changed. Just look at Monica Rambeau, who was already showing signs of developing powers before she pushed through Wanda's reality-altering barrier over Westview. And if Monica could have been changed while trapped somewhere that could have very well been the other void. Stands to reason that some other supernatural creatures and forces could have piggybacked other victims in the same way. Remember, Moon Knight is an anti-hero who often fights against supernatural beings, and as of right now, the MCU isn't looking too supernatural. Even magic is considered to be science we've yet to understand, with supernatural forces being somewhat out of place in the expanded universe. But with members of the Midnight Suns like Moon Knight, the Black Knight, and Blade poised to save the MCU from supernatural evils in the future, we know that these creatures have to appear at some point. So why not just say that the world was changed to an even greater extent when Endgame brought everyone back? It's a lot better than the theory that these supernatural creatures were always present but hiding, especially when we have masters in the magical arts like Doctor Strange in the Avengers, who would have certainly known something about it. Speaking of the Midnight Suns, Moon Knight might set the tone for another hero. At least that's what the experts are saying based on what they've been told about the show. According to reports, the 6-part series will be premiering on DisneyPlus on the 30th of March. It's set to change the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it. As we mentioned earlier, Moon Knight is a character often faced with supernatural enemies, and we know the series will be leaning in that direction from one specific detail that's been spotted in the latest trailer. You see, there's been an addition to a scene that first arrived in the teaser trailer, and it makes all the difference when you think about it. Rather than having Moon Knight smashing the floor of the bathroom in rage, we now see him slamming his fist against a creature that is beastly in nature. In fact, it looks a bit like a malnourished werewolf, and while we could be wrong about this designation, it goes without saying that the creature is supernatural in nature. That is, unless this is all happening within the mind of Mark Spector, but that's a disappointing theory for another day. If this is indeed the case, Marvel might be down for introducing more members of the Midnight Suns in the future, making for a pretty great team-up movie like the Avengers of old. But who will Kevin Feige be introducing next? Well, according to sources, this may actually be none other than Ghost Rider. But wasn't the Ghost Rider show canceled a few years back? Yes, and that's the point. When the character was introduced and portrayed by Gabriel Luna in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the decision was made to write the character out of the show and cancel his original spin-off. But since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is yet to be confirmed as canon in the MCU, this has opened the door for a new actor to take on the role of Vengeance in the extended universe. An actor who, from the very start, has been coached and informed by Kevin Feige. Rather than going with Robbie Reyes of the S.H.I.E.L.D. universe, the MCU can now introduce the original Ghost Rider in the form of Johnny Blaze. Some fans screaming for Keanu Reeves to take on the role. As of right now, nothing has been confirmed, but we know that Keanu has spoken in the past about just how much he wants to be a part of the MCU. And as it turns out, Moon Knight could be the start of everything. And there you have it, everything you need to know about the future of the MCU and rumors surrounding the newest Disney Plus series. Are you looking forward to Moon Knight though? And what do you think of these fan theories? Feel free to let us know in the comments section down below.